Hello, everybody, and welcome to Research Methods in Criminology. I am Dr. Jensen, and I am your instructor for Spring 2023. So welcome to class. I'm delighted to be teaching you this semester, and I wanted to give you a brief welcome video. Some of you have had my classes before, others have not. This class is very different than some of the other classes that I teach, so I wanted to make sure that you got a sense of how it works and how to be successful. So welcome to spring. Let's get started. So first, I wanted to share with you a welcome and then also what to expect and a little bit about me and what you'll learn, some expectations I have of you, what you should expect back from me, and again, how to be successful in class. So let's jump into that. This is just a little bit of information about myself. I'm going to move me up here. So I have a PhD and 2 master's degrees from the universities you see on screen there. I also previously taught at Brigham Young University for over 7 years as an associate professor. I also received that rank of associate professor here at University of Florida. And this class especially is why I was brought to University of Florida. It was specifically for this class because this is my highest rated course, Social Statistics and Research Methods. So I take this class very seriously, and I've been teaching it for 12 years, and 6 years in person, 6 years online. It's very different in person versus online, but it's something I really enjoy, and I want to make sure that we make sure you're successful with it too. But essentially, this is my background. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it. If you want to talk more later, if you're interested in graduate study or other things, we can have those conversations too. So one thing I do like to emphasize is that I'm like you. So I recently completed a 100% online master's degree at the University of Louisville. That was my Master of Social Work degree. So I've been on the other side of the keyboard having to write papers and complete labs and do sessions and, 100% distance learning online. It's hard, especially when you're working full time while you do it. And I have children and I had toddlers at the time. So, it was very, very busy. So just know that I've been in your shoes, and I try to design my class so that you have all the tools and supports needed. You have to make sure you carve out time to use them, but I try to make this class as hands-on and kind of self-helpful as possible and also be available to you. But we're going to talk more about that later. Where I have worked, practiced, and partnered. So I've been in a lot of different criminal justice organizations, and I try to kind of make our labs similar in that way so that it feels more relevant to the field that you might be working in someday. So I've worked in all of these different areas in criminal justice. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate all the different professionals that work in these areas and all the service that they provide. So hopefully the skills in this class will help you be able to be employable in these areas, because many, many fields are looking for people that know how to do research, that know how to do analysis, and know how to manage data. And those are 3 big skills you're going to get out of this class. So first of all, you've probably already noticed in preparing for class, this class doesn't have a textbook. It's very hands-on learning. So I want you to treat this class like a data workshop. By the way, this video is just very informational, and it has a lot of good preparation, tips and tricks. So it is really good to watch, but it's a lot of info. So if you need to speed me up, I promise I will not take offense. You can use the settings on YouTube or in MediaSite to speed up to 1.5 or 1.75 speed. That is perfectly fine. Sometimes we can hear things a little faster than read them, or vice versa. And if that works better for you, that is okay. You won't offend me. So if you need to stop and speed me up, that is fine, because this is kind of just syllabus day, how to get set up and prepared. It's a lot of information, and it's not as interesting or sexy as maybe some of the other things we're going to talk about. So speed me up if needed. But materials for your learning are mostly from articles and best practices. I've kind of self-authored this class. We're using required software, which is IBM SPSS. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And essentially, this class is research methods and statistics, and it's taught in an applied manner for your job. So I tell people, treat this class like a workshop that you're doing as part of your employment, where it's hands-on. You're going to be in different data sets every day, working with different variables, manipulating data, crunching through functions and statistics, writing up reports and results. It's very much like that. It's not a sit back and listen to your professor with your earbuds kind of class. You have to be very hands-on, fingers on the keyboard, navigating with the mouse, finding stuff. So just be prepared for that. We don't use discussion boards, but we do have regular group communication times. Those are mostly to be arranged in advance. So if you want to do like a group office hour session, maybe with you and a classmate, we also assign lab partners in class. So you have people to reach out to if you're stuck on a lab that we're doing. And they're all data and statistics labs that we do. We do 8 of them in class, but there are people you can meet with, or you can do joint sessions together. I have a phone number you can call me and text me at. I provide that to you on our course website. It's actually linked to my cell phone. It's a Google Voice number. You can text it, and you can even send me screenshots of stuff that you're working on. So I'll talk again more about that availability later, but I do provide that to you so that you have a little bit more real-time support. Because as I've learned when I teach this class in person, you do your labs and it's led by maybe a teaching assistant or maybe the instructor, and you only have 50 minutes or so to do that lab, and you're all kind of crunching away together on computers in a classroom, and it's got to be turned in by the end of the session, and that can be kind of stressful for people. When you're in an online class, you kind of have unlimited time to get your lab done, so you just have to get it done by the deadline, which is the end of the week. And for this class, that's always going to be Sunday night, but I'll talk more about that in the syllabus video that we do next. So basically anytime between Monday and the following week, Sunday night, you have to get your labs done, your assignments done. Most of the time things are done on Sunday night, because I figure your online students, you probably need the weekend to work and the evenings, and sometimes some weeks are harder than others. So at least you have Saturday and Sunday to try to finish up work if necessary. I wanted to show you this next slide. Now this is actually Lysandra, one of our assistants that work in our main office in Turlington Hall on campus at University of Florida, Department of Sociology, Criminology, and Law. So I had her pose like this and take a picture of her so that I could show you a really good setup and a good strategy for doing the class. So right now, Lysandra is in a lab, okay? So she has her computer. She's opened up the SPSS software, and she's actually in 2 different windows. She has a window here that is her data set, and then she has another window over here, which is her output, which is kind of like the receipt or ticker tape that comes out of one of those old-fashioned 10-key calculators, which is kind of all the functions that have been run and all the changes that have been made versus the data itself. And so you have lots of windows open in this class. So having large screens is very helpful. But look at over here. She actually has her cell phone that is listening to the lecture and listening to Dr. Jensen navigate her through the steps she needs to complete the lab. So most of the labs you do have that kind of support where you could put me in a video on your smartphone, and I kind of narrate where I show you what menu to go to, where to click, how to do things. The further we go in labs, I kind of do a little bit less of that, because after a while you already know how to run a frequency, you already know where the functions are located at, and we don't always have to do the same things all the time. So we go a little bit faster, but this is the setup that you should seek to do because I think it's most helpful. And I've talked to many students over the years that I've asked them, what are things that are useful to you in the class? And they said having a setup like this where you either have your smartphone or a tablet or some other device nearby next to your laptop or computer screen where we can look and reference the lecture or the video while we're completing the lab, because you're going to walk us through all the steps, is really helpful. So when you get ready to do your lab, set it up in this manner. This is going to be useful for you in the future. Also, once you start a lab, generally speaking, Canvas saves your work as you go. Every so many minutes, it'll do an autosave. So if you start a lab maybe on Tuesday night and you want to finish it before you go out for the evening on Friday night, you can come back to the lab that you maybe got halfway through and actually finish the other half and then submit when you're ready. So that's another thing that's kind of nice, is you can do like half a lab one night, the other half another night. You can do it all in one sitting if you want to. If you'd prefer to do it that way, that's fine too. But it is nice that you can kind of work a little bit as you go and you don't have to do it all in one moment. But the labs, to be fair, are probably between 60 to 90 minutes, kind of start to finish, getting all the pieces in place. So that's what you should plan for when you do labs. That's why this is a 4-credit class. It has a lot of moving parts to it. All right, so class goals. My goal really is to get you comfortable using SPSS, and SPSS literally stands for Statistical Package for the Social Sciences. It's been around forever, since the 80s. I've started using version 14 back in the day, and now it's up to version 28. So it's been around a really long time. It was bought by IBM, is still owned by them. Qualtrics, I think, is interested in maybe buying it or acquiring it. But it's basically a statistical software package that you're going to use in class. And we'll show you a little bit about it in just a moment here. But I want you to practice the basics of social research, especially as they pertain to studying crime, because when we study crime, there are really unique things about it. So for example, what if you want to study a drug user population? Well, that population is largely hidden because they're doing illegal activity, right? How do we get access to them? How do you talk to victims and offenders? How do you script your questions or your interviews or your surveys to deal with sensitive topics that have to do with harm in people's lives? So we talk about these kinds of things in the class because doing research on crime is really unique research to have to do. So how do we know what we know? How do we get information in a way that also deals with the whole justice system and how people are processed and handled and punished and then released back out into the public and so on and so forth. So we integrate a lot of those kinds of things about studying crime into the class. So all of this, as we talk about it together, will bring your skills forward into a paper or a research report that you turn in at the very end of class. It has a big paper that you finish at the end. And all the other sections that are taught by all of our other professors in the department do the same. So we are all required to do a major research paper at the end of this class. All right, my expectations of you. So yes, you do need to use SPSS software. So I'm going to take a moment just to go ahead and navigate you into that so you can kind of see what that looks like. So you go to login.apps.ufl.edu. And this software, I already signed in. I'm actually going to sign out. So you can see the whole sign-in process. But essentially, you're going to go to a screen that's going to prompt you for your Gator link, user ID, and password. Okay, so you type that in. And you'll go, and again, this is the screen, login.apps.ufl.edu. So once you go to this screen, you'll be asked to authenticate using Duo. So you have to push an authentication out to Duo. I use my cell phone. And I authenticate, I approve. Yes, it's really me. I'm really using this software. This software is paid for by your student fees, by the way. When you get to the home screen, you're presented a series of icons and apps. So these are all the software licenses that University of Florida has licensed for use in many different courses throughout the university. And you can see over here, we actually have a lot of SPSS programs there, including version 28. They still have version 27 available for a few more months. You can use either, they're very similar, but the way you recognize it is looking for the sigma. That is how you know you're in SPSS land, okay? So the easier way to deal with it, I think, is just to use the search icon up here, type in SPSS and search, and then you'll see it'll list all the different software applications that are available to you. Then once you get to that application, I tell people to put a star in the corner of the application. It'll add it to your favorites on your home screen. So that way, when you go home, you'll actually have all the software and folders you use most often readily accessible, and you don't have to sit there and search for SPSS every time. The other thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to look for the M drive and the R drive. So when you go into search, you can type in the word drive, and essentially the M drive and the R drive are where we do all the file storage for class. Okay, so in here, this is my M drive. I actually have lots of data sets and files in here that I use to teach you, and we use in different labs. Okay, so we have police data, we have victim data, we have drug user data, we have convicts, we have law enforcement, we have all kinds of stuff in here. Okay, so I'm going to close this for now. But essentially, the M drive is the drive you're going to use. It's permanent student file storage. And I remind you when you do the labs that this is what you want to use to save all your files when you're working in the labs. So this is your drive. You'll see your Gator link in there, and I show you where it is once we're in the software. And that's where you're going to save to. So it's good to kind of favorite that one. The other one you want to favorite as well is the R drive. The R drive is where I store all your data that you're actually going to use in class. So in the R drive are copies of all the file folders and things like data sets and output and syntax and things like that that we use in labs. So the R drive stands for research. It's the research drive, and that's where we do all our research at University of Florida. It has several terabytes attached to it. But again, you'll see your Gator link. Mine is Jensen T. You'll see your Gator link in here. You have an M drive. That's your temporary storage. And you have common files are. The way you get to files in our class is you go to courses and then you select the semester you're in. Just for navigation's sake, I'm going to select fall from prior semester. And then you can go into data, and this is where you're going to find all your files. Okay. So once you find a file you want, you can actually open it. You can also navigate directly from the software as well and select the file you need for that week's lab. Okay, so again, these are the kinds of files I suggest, programs and folders I suggest adding to your favorites once you're in login.apps.ufl.edu. So hopefully you found that kind of helpful, but you're going to be spending a lot of time in here. All right, so again, you have to use the SPSS software. And in the background, I'm actually going to go ahead and launch the software so you can see it. So I'll launch version 27. Just keep in mind when you get ready to launch the software, it does take a few moments to load. It's an old IBM dinosaur. It's just one of those things. So this is where you go and get your snack and you come back and then you're like, oh, good, SPSS actually opened. Okay. It's just kind of a RAM hog. It takes a lot of memory to open. So it's just one of those things. But anyway, sometimes you'll get little help us support SPSS. We don't care. Just close it. Okay. Here is the software itself. This is just a blank data set. Okay, so you have two different tabs here. I take you on little tours so you know where to find things. There's menus that have all kinds of functions that we run in here, but this is essentially SPSS. Okay. So this is the program you're going to be using. And from here, you can actually open your data that you need from, file, open data. And this is where you can navigate to the R drive, right? And go into your course, and you'll have a course that's this semester and year that you're in. And you'll be able to go get the data that you're looking for your lab. So you can actually open up your data right in here. Okay. So there's data, and in here you see we have all kinds of files, and we can go open up different data sets and open them up for class. The one you're probably going to be in the most is the ad health data. And a lot of people actually use the ad health data for their final paper. But this is some data, so you actually get to see what it looks like right here in our welcome video. Okay, you don't have to remember all this stuff. I walk you through it. But this is the data view. It looks like just a bunch of series of numbers. There's 8,000 rows, there's 8,000 columns and 5,000 rows. So it can be a little overwhelming. But you get to the variable view and you actually see there's cool stuff in here. Like these numbers represent things like when were you born and how old are you and what is your race and what is your gender. And then you get into some questions that have to do with where you live or people in your household. They ask you questions about your residential mom or your biological dad. They ask about your sex, your health, your usage of medication, your friendships. They also ask you about crime. That happens a little bit later in the data set, so we'll get into that in a moment. But really, really cool stuff that we'll look at in this class. Just a reminder, please be very hands-on and active. As you can see, I was just navigating through the keyboard. That's how it's going to feel when you're in labs and working on your assignments and stuff like that. So again, not a sit back and listen to professor through your earbuds kind of class. Communicate often and early for help. One thing I learned as an online student is you really have to work ahead of those deadlines. So even though the professor set a deadline for next week, You have to set your own deadlines for getting your drafting done, getting the work done, and putting the final polishes on the paper before it comes in. So really think about what is needed and the hours and the preparation that are well in advance of the deadline. I tell people the final paper you have to write for this class is not a paper you can write the night before. It ends up being a 20 to 25 page paper. It's probably the biggest paper you've ever written in college. And it takes a lot of work. It has something like 12 different sections. It has data analysis and tables and references and formatting, and it's a beast. It is a monster to write. So we take the last 6 weeks of the semester and we write it in sections so that way you can turn in those parts. I give you feedback, the teaching assistant gives you feedback, and you can go apply some edits and fixes and improve it and polish it. And then basically the last 2 weeks of the semester, you just stitch it together and do your final editing and turn it in. Okay, so that's the idea. So this is kind of what we call a portfolio approach to a class, where you do a little bit each week and then you assemble it into one final product. So I've asked students in the past, I've taught about 3,000 of you by now in this class. That means I've read 3,000 20 to 25 page papers. It's a lot of grading to do at the end of the semester, but it's something that I do for a living, and it's not easy, but it's good stuff. I've asked them, how much time do you actually spend in this class? It is a 4-credit class that is essentially a 3-credit lecture class and a 1-hour lab. So we just combine it online to be 4 credits. So it takes up a big chunk of your schedule for spring semester. And they've told me we spend anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a week on average in this class. Some weeks will be quite a bit lighter, maybe 6 to 8 hours, maybe 8 to 10, and others might be a little bit heavier, like when we get closer to finals week and it's time for final drafting and doing formatting and all those kind of things. So just realize, this class sucks up a lot of time and a lot of energy, and you're going to be in your videos and your data sets and your labs regularly, okay? So please, please, please do not take this class with other heavy workload classes. And I'm talking about criminological theory, law and legal process, and some of these other classes that are really kind of heavier with writing and reading and stuff like that. So I'm very good friends with Laura Beth Lancaster. I'll go full screen for a minute. I'm an advisor for UF Online for our department, and Laura Beth Lancaster is also an advisor for UF Online for the college. So we work hand in hand together when students have questions about enrollment or requirements or need approval for transfer credits and all that good stuff. But she agrees with me on this. Please do not take this class with other required classes for the major that are really heavy. Now, that being said, you might be able to take it with maybe some of the law requirement classes, or maybe some electives. You could probably do that and manage okay. But don't take a bunch of required classes together. It's just a heavy workload, and it can be sabotage, self-sabotage. So we try to warn students about that ahead of time and say, you might want to punt that class for a later semester. However, we know sometimes because of enrollment or your own life and disruptions that you're kind of stuck with the schedule you have, or maybe available seats aren't there and you just have to take it now while you can get it. And we understand that happens. But just, again, really set aside the time you need for the workload for this class. It happens every semester. There's always a few students who don't pass. And it's very, very heartbreaking for me because I know that this class is required and they have to take it again. And so I always have students retaking this class every semester. It's always a challenge to see them again. I welcome them back. I don't have hard feelings. It's, I want them to pass. I want them to graduate. But a lot of times they just don't get that final paper done. And they are missing parts, or they never wrote parts, and they're not turning stuff in. They're just buried and overwhelmed. And it's really, really hard. So if you find yourself struggling, please set up regular meetings with me or the teaching assistant, because we can really kind of keep you on task and troubleshoot stuff ahead of time to make it easier so that you don't get behind and find yourself really drowning in material and unable to catch up. So That being said, I always tell people I don't give the speech on how to get an A in the class. I tell people how not to fail, because I don't want you failing the class. You have to petition the dean to retake it again. It is required to graduate, and you have to get a C or better. You cannot get a C minus. You have to get the C or better. That's a college requirement. You have to get a C passing grade for every class required by the major. And I definitely have students each semester that say, you know what, Jensen, this class is just part of me getting promoted at work. I don't care about my GPA. C's get degrees. I just want to pass. What do I need to do to pass? Complete all your assignments, turn things in on time, make sure you set aside time to get that final paper done, and you'll do just fine. The difference between a C and a B and an A is watching every video, reading every announcement, and putting in the time and effort it takes to do a quality job on your labs, your drafts, and your final paper. But really, the biggest part of your grade comes from the final paper. That's the score, ultimately, that you get in the class. And I try to help you build your skills and get the drafting done so that final paper is so much easier toward the end of the semester. So anyway, I will come out from full screen now. And just emphasize that this class also meets a UF Gordon rule. The Gordon rule was passed by the Florida legislature that says everybody has to write 24,000 words of research and writing during their college career, and these certain courses are earmarked of being a major writing element in the course, and this course is a 4,000 word course. So yes, you will be writing a 20 to 25 page paper, and that paper is due on April 30th? Yeah. It's due on April 30th. So I like to say that in the very beginning of class, April 30th, that paper comes in, which is the weekend after the reading days and the week of final exams. So I give you through the weekend to finish up, but April 30th, that paper comes in. No more questions, end of story, that paper's in. Because I have to turn in grades for the registrar, that they have deadlines that I need to meet for graduation. All right, rounding out and finishing up the video. Sorry, it's gotten a little winded. What you should expect from me. I try to do my email and text and phone call responses within the next day, the next business day, if I possibly can, 24 to 48 hours. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I miss things. So if you don't hear back from me within the next day or so, please ping me again. Sometimes things happen. But yes, we've been asked to provide those responses to you as immediately as possible. I am available for phone calls and Zoom sessions and troubleshooting. We can share screens. You can send me screenshots of stuff, and we can look at your work together. My virtual office hours are through Zoom. I do not meet in person with students. I live very far away from campus. You'll almost never see me in Turlington Hall. So I live away from Gainesville. I don't even live anywhere near Gainesville, but I do all my office hours through Zoom, and that is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. So Monday through Friday, I set that part of my day aside for you where I'm available. I don't just kind of sit in an open Zoom session. I do ask for people to make appointments ahead of time, and I can send you a Zoom link so you can jump in a session. Okay, so look at your week and plan your time, and then we can meet together. But I figured kind of mid-morning to after lunch is a good time for office hours, because most people that work full-time can maybe carve out some time out of their lunch break to maybe work on some assignments and stuff. I do try to be available in the evenings and weekends where possible. There are a few nights a week that I'm busy. Of course, I have a family and other things I attend to, but I try to pick up and answer or text as often as I can. I'm not a 24-hour help desk, but I try to respond as often as possible, because I know online students work at night and on the weekends, and that's what I was doing too. So I try to give you as much real-time help as I can, but sometimes I am kind of out and about with family, or I have other obligations I have to attend to. Try not to text me really late at night, as you wouldn't want to do with your boss, right? Things like that. I'm also here to provide reassurance when you make mistakes. It's how we learn. And I've always told students, don't get too upset about any one lab score or any one assignment, because you can always bounce back. I do offer extra credit at the end of the semester, and that final paper score is ultimately your grade. So don't get too worried about some of those extra points that come in. Learn from it and move on, and you'll score even better on the next one. So we already kind of did our little tour of login.apps.ufl.edu, but this is where you're going to find SPSS, the statistical package for the social sciences. The free version is through apps. Again, your your university fees pays for these licenses for you to use for free. So 90% of my students just use the free software on the virtual private network and navigate that way. But if for some reason you find yourself traveling a lot and you don't want to work on the campus VPN, you don't have good access to internet, and you get, cranky service or disruptions or intermittent connectivity, and you're like, I just need to put my own license on my own machine, you can certainly buy your own license if you want to. So I usually take a little bit of time in the video to show you how to do that, but hardly anybody buys it anymore. So if you do find you need to buy it, reach out to me. It's around $60 to $70 for a 6-month license, and I think about $115 for a 12-month license. You really don't need the 12-month, you can just use the 6. But if you do find yourself wanting to buy the software, it's a limited use license for your laptop or computer, reach out to me and I'll show you exactly which version to buy, because you have to buy the right version with all the functions. But again, hardly anybody buys it anymore. So I kind of just do that on a per student basis. But this would mostly be for students that find themselves traveling or away from good internet a lot. So it might be useful just to have SPSS on your machine. Okay, so reach out if this pertains to you and I can help you with that purchase. And again, onthehub.com is just a software vendor that provides educational discounts for students on software that's widely used across many different universities. And essentially, they give you the discount by using your .edu email address provided to you by your university to verify that you are a student at a university, and will give you an educational discount for the software. So that's really all it is. All right, kind of rounding out our video, how to be successful. These are those tips and tricks that I promised you. So really treat this class like a capstone course and a training for your criminology career. Make sure you keep a data log. So I know it feels like, oh, everything can be electronic nowadays. You'd be surprised when you're using a software program like SPSS, it's not as straightforward as I would think other software programs are, because it doesn't layer window upon window very well. So you can really only be in maybe 2 windows at a time in this software program. And you have to kind of be careful about that. So sometimes you need information from one window, like variable labels or variable names or information about where a variable is located, and that's over here, but you're already in a function window over here that now you have to close to go get back to this window. So sometimes it is just easier to get, right, a little set of Post-it notes and a pen, or maybe even a notebook, right? Like a data notebook. So I tell people, keep just a notebook nearby or some Post-it notes, because you have to jot stuff down. You have to remember little details of variables all the time, especially in this software program. And to kind of just jot things down and use your notebook to do some of your planning while you're navigating through large data sets or code books and things, trying to find information. You might need to reference that information quickly. So using pen and paper is very, very handy in this class. Keep a data log, a little notebook of all your notes when running analyses or variables you need to keep track of, or details or descriptions that you need to, in the middle of a lab. Jot things down. So this is a class you'll get a spiral bound notebook or Post-it notes that it is good to kind of write these things down. And students will like hold them up to their cameras with Zoom. They'll say, look, here's my notebook and I've been writing down all my stuff. And I went, good, that's perfect. Dedicate time each week for this class. We kind of talked about that already. This class is a time sucker, especially in the labs and the paper drafts. It's going to take up a lot of your semester, so just make sure you're mindful of that. Also, install or obtain your software early. For those of you that are not buying the software, that's no problem. Just make sure you can log on to logon.apps.ufl.edu and you can see the software. That's really all you need to do. For those of you buying the software, reach out to me within the first week of class so we can get it on your machine. Make sure you use good file storage habits and naming conventions. Don't lose track of where you save stuff or what version of the data you're in. So this is where you have to stay super organized on what you're doing. And then be really honest about what works and what doesn't, what's confusing. Occasionally I find a broken link in class that I need to fix. I'm not offended. Just tell me if you run into something like that. I promise I will not be mad. Sometimes things happen when I merge content across Canvas and things break. So yeah, please reach out. Chances are if you're struggling with that, somebody else is also struggling with that and it needs to be fixed or replaced or updated. And that's okay. It happens. Welcome to class. I'm glad to see you. And just again, reach out if you have questions. The next video you're going to watch is going to walk you through the syllabus, deadlines, labs, and a few other things that are important. So again, kind of the boring stuff, first day of class things, but it can get you really prepared and a sense of what to expect. So we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.